The first time I saw my son, he was sprinting straight past me toward another man, yelling, "Dad, watch this!" Gasworks Park smelled like wet grass and cheap hot dogs. The Seattle skyline was a cardboard cutout against a flat gray sky. Kids were screaming on the play structure. Dogs were losing their minds over tennis balls. And I was just a guy with a coffee trying not to think about the life I didn't have. Then a neon green foam football rolled to my shoes. "Sorry, mister," a small voice called. I bent down to pick it up and my brain just stalled. Up close, he looked like a photo I didn't remember taking. Same dark hair that pretends gravity is optional, same crooked left dimple, same tiny crease between the eyebrows when he focuses too hard on something stupid, like a foam ball on a windy day. "Nice throw," I managed. "Thanks," he grinned, grabbing the ball from my hand. His fingers brushed my knuckles, warm, quick, and every nerve in my body lit up like I'd stuck a fork in an outlet. A shadow stopped beside him. "Hey buddy, don't run off like that," a man's voice said. Calm, comfortable, possessive in that casual family way. The boy turned, face shining. "Dad, did you see that?" I almost hit him. Dad. The word hit harder than it should have. 8 years ago, a doctor told me my son never took a breath. I built my whole life on that sentence. I buried a kid who never had a funeral. Now that kid was begging another man to watch him throw a football. The man, tall, early 40s, North Face jacket, expensive, calm, laughed. "You didn't, so apologize and try again." I was still trying to swallow around the word dad when someone said my name. "Caleb?" I turned. Lauren stood a few yards away, paper cup clutched so tight the lid dented. Her hair was shorter, lighter, styled in those effortless waves you know took 40 minutes and 2 products. Same green eyes, though. Same flinch when she saw how hard I was staring at the boy. "Wow," she said, forcing a smile. "Long time." That's what people say when they run into a college friend at Target, not the man they left in a hospital hallway with a dead son and some clipped apologies. "Yeah," I said. "Been a while." The man walked over with the boy glued to his side. "Everything okay?" he asked Lauren, like I might need managing. Lauren's hand drifted to the boy's shoulder. "Yeah, just ran into an old friend." "Old friend. Right. That's one way to rename a failed marriage." The boy looked up at me, curious. No recognition, of course. Why would there be? To him, I was just a sweaty stranger in a worn mariner's hoodie. "This is Noah," Lauren said, carefully, like she knew exactly what that name would do to me. My stomach dropped. We'd once scribbled that name on a scrap of paper and stuck it to our fridge. We never got to use it. Apparently she did. "Hey, Noah," I said. He gave a shy half smile. "Hi," he mumbled, then tugged on the man's jacket. "Dad, can we go back to the swings now?" "Dad." Again, like a hammer. The man offered his hand to me. "Mark," he said. "We haven't met, I think." Oh, we'd met, on paper. His name sat at the bottom of a divorce decree I'd signed without really reading, eyes red, hand shaking. "Caleb," I said, shaking his hand because my muscles are polite even when my soul is on fire. Lauren shifted. "We should go," she said quickly. "We're meeting some people." "Good to see you, Caleb," she added, lying like a professional. "You too," I lied back. I watched them walk away across the wet grass. The kid, Noah, my almost name, reached up and grabbed Mark's hand like it belonged there. My stupid dimple flashed when he laughed. My shoulders, my gait, my DNA, calling somebody else dad in the middle of a Saturday afternoon. Rain started, thin and cold, Seattle adding special effects. On the drive back to Capitol Hill, I kept my hands locked at 10 and 2, like I was taking a driving test. The wipers squeaked, keeping time with my thoughts. Not mine. Mine. Not mine. Mine. By the time I climbed the narrow stairs to my third-floor apartment, my legs felt hollow. I dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door and listened to the echo like it belonged to somebody else's life. I should have showered. Changed. Texted my coworker some sarcastic message about running into my ex, her new husband, and a kid wearing my face. Normal, well-adjusted things. Instead, I walked straight to my bedroom. The top left drawer of my dresser always sticks. You have to pull twice like you're asking permission. I tugged once, twice, and it jerked open with a little groan. Under a mess of badly folded t-shirts sat a thick, yellowing envelope. Swedish Hospital, L&D, written in blue ink across the front. My fingers went cold. I hadn't opened it in years. It was my private haunted house. Proof that everything that happened that night was real. Proof that I wasn't just some guy who had a bad dream and never woke up. It's just paper, I told myself. On my kitchen table, under the too bright overhead light, I slid everything out. Discharge summaries, billing statements, a crumpled plastic wristband with my name half rubbed off. And then the form that had broken me the first time I saw it. Certificate of fetal death. My name, Lauren's name, dates, codes, the official government version of heartbreak. I stared at the box with the doctor's information. Printed name, Aaron Whitfield, MD. My mind flashed back to a white coat in a fluorescent hallway. The man who said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Morgan," before telling me my son never made it. His badge had read Whitman. I remembered because I stared at the letters until they blurred. Whitman. Not Whitfield. I frowned, that familiar crease digging between my eyebrows. Maybe I remembered wrong. 8 years. Trauma. Brains, misfile stuff. I looked at the time of death. 3:46 a.m. The clock on the wall that night glowed 4:17 when he told me. I know because for months afterward I'd jolt awake at exactly 4:17, gasping like my body had set an alarm for pain. 31 minutes. Wrong name. Wrong time. The paper trembled slightly in my hand. For 8 years I'd never questioned this form. Never questioned that my son died. For the first time, a different thought whispered through the static. What if he didn't? The form on my kitchen table blurred, the black letters smearing into each other. I blinked hard, but all I could see was a hallway 8 years ago, washed in fluorescent light that made everyone look slightly dead. The maternity floor at Swedish smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. Someone had tried to make it cheerful. Pastel paintings of cartoon animals, a bulletin board with photos of smiling newborns. But the vending machine humming in the corner ruined the illusion. I'd been sitting in a plastic chair that was about 2 sizes too small for a grown man, still in my work clothes. Blue button down, sleeves rolled up, tie shoved in my pocket. There was a Starbucks cup cooling on the floor by my foot with my name spelled wrong on the side. Caleb. Close enough. I remember checking my phone every 30 seconds even though nobody was texting me. I'd sent Lauren's mom an update. She's in there. Still early, they say it's routine. Because that's what they tell husbands to say when they have no idea what's actually happening. A nurse had popped her head out of the double doors. "Mr. Morgan? We're taking her into the OR," she said. "Baby's heart rate is dipping a bit. It's precautionary." My heartbeat flipped upside down. "Okay. Can I? You have to wait out here for now," she said in that calm, firm way people use on panicked relatives. "We'll come get you as soon as we can." So I waited. I counted ceiling tiles. I watched a muted sitcom on the TV in the corner, where people were laughing with their whole bodies. I tried to text Lauren something stupid to make her smile when she woke up, like "bet you $5 he looks like me," but I couldn't make my fingers work. Time stretched. 30 minutes. 40. An hour? The red digits on the clock above the nurse's station crawled toward 4 a.m. When the double doors finally opened, a doctor stepped out. Tall, dark hair shot with gray, white coat, stethoscope, the whole uniform. His badge caught my eye for half a second. Whitman, Aaron, MD. "Mr. Morgan?" he said gently. "You know that thing they say about knowing bad news before anyone speaks?" It's true, my chest had already gone hollow. "What's going on?" I asked. My voice sounded wrong. Too loud, like it didn't fit in the hallway. He did the face, the one doctors must practice in a mirror. Soft eyes. Careful mouth. "I'm so sorry," he said. "There were complications. Your son, he didn't make it." The words just sat there between us. I heard them, registered the grammar, but my brain refused to assign meaning. "What?" I said, even though I'd heard him perfectly. "There was significant distress," he went on, using long words that didn't help. "We attempted resuscitation, but there was no sustainable cardiac activity. We did everything we could." In my memory, there's a clock over his shoulder. 4:17 a.m. I stared at it because I couldn't look at his face anymore. The colon between the numbers blinked every second like it was mocking me. "I want to see him," I said. It came out more like a croak. Dr. Whitman hesitated. Just a tiny pause. He's already been transferred, he said. The remains are being processed. There are procedures. Paperwork. We can arrange for you too. Remains, I repeated, like if I could untangle that one word, everything would make sense. He put a hand on my shoulder. Right now your wife is sedated. She lost a lot of blood. The best thing you can do is rest and be ready to support her when she wakes up. I didn't ask the questions I should have. I didn't demand to see anything. I didn't scream or throw a chair or refuse to sign. I just nodded because the floor felt like it was tilting, and the only thing keeping me upright was pretending this was a conversation I could handle. A nurse led me to a little room labeled family consultation. There were tissues on the table and a box of crayons in the corner like grief could be distracted by coloring. They brought in forms. Consent. Release. Something with fetal death typed neatly at the top. My name printed under a line. I signed wherever they put a sticky note. My hand shook so badly, my signature looked like it belonged to someone else. Do you want us to handle arrangements with the funeral home? A social worker asked in a soft, practiced voice. Sure, I said. I had no idea what I was agreeing to. There was a roaring in my ears. All I could think was I had a son. Past tense. Just like that. At some point I must have dozed off in that ugly armchair, because the next memory I have is jerking awake, neck screaming, mouth dry. The clock on the wall said 7:03. Light was leaking around the edges of the blinds. I stumbled back to the nurse's station. My wife, I said. Lauren Morgan, can I see her now? The nurse typing at the computer looked up, then frowned slightly at her screen. One moment, she made a call, listened. Her eyebrows lifted a fraction. Mr. Morgan, she said carefully, covering the receiver with her hand, it looks like your wife was transferred to another facility closer to her family. It was arranged early this morning. I'm sure they'll be in touch. Transferred. Arranged. In touch. I remember staring at her like she'd just spoken another language. Without telling me? I asked. There were a lot of moving parts, she said, that same calm, practiced tone from before. Sometimes things move quickly after a situation like, well, I'm very sorry for your loss. I walked out of the hospital with a plastic bag of Lauren's clothes, a stack of papers I was too numb to read, and a clock time burned into my brain. 4:17 a.m. Back at my kitchen table 8 years later, I stared at the line on the certificate. Time of death, 3:46 a.m. Different doctor's name, different time, same kid. And suddenly, I wasn't sure which part of that night had actually happened, and which part I just accepted, because it hurt too much to look closer. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. I turned off the lights, lay down, stared at the ceiling fan like it might hypnotize me into forgetting I'd seen my dead son throwing a foam football. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw 2 clocks. 4:17, glowing red in a hospital hallway. 3:46 printed in black ink on government paper. You'd think after 8 years your brain would run out of new ways to hurt you. Turns out it's very creative. Back then, after the hospital, I did what everyone told me was healthy. I went back to work downtown. I showed up in slacks and a button-down, learned new financial models, pretended my entire personality was spreadsheets and quarterly reports. Seattle looked exactly the same. Rain, traffic, coffee. But everything had a slight echo, like the world was happening 2 rooms away. I moved into a 1-bedroom on Capitol Hill and furnished it like a grown-up starter kit. IKEA couch, small dining table, bed that creaked on one side. I threw myself into late nights at the office. People thought I was ambitious. Really, I just didn't want to be alone in a room with my own thoughts. Every once in a while, I'd open that hospital envelope, stare at the certificate until my eyes burned, then shove it back in the drawer like closing a browser tab. Grief as a file you can minimize. There were a few half-hearted attempts at dating. A graphic designer who loved hiking, a nurse who laughed at all my terrible jokes. It never stuck. There was always this invisible third person at the table. This kid who didn't exist but somehow took up all the space. Eventually I stopped trying. Easier to be the single guy at the firm than the guy with the dead baby and commitment issues. Jordan joined our team around year 5. 20-something, perpetual sneakers, owns more hoodies than dress shirts. He's the kind of coworker who brings donuts for morale and then eats half the box himself. "Dude, you look like you haven't slept since the 2008 crash," he said once, dropping a maple bar on my desk. "Bold of you to assume I slept during the crash," I deadpanned. He became the closest thing I had to a friend. We'd grab pho or tacos after work, make fun of client emails, complain about rent. He knew I'd been married and divorced, but not the rest. The baby-shaped crater in my life stayed off limits, a locked room on a floor nobody visited. Then, a few months ago, I went for a run along the waterfront in Kirkland on a rare, clear Saturday. The kind of day when the lake looks like glass and the mountains are showing off in the distance. Families were out with strollers and bikes, little kids weaving unpredictably like tiny drunk people. I remember because I nearly tripped over one. He darted across the path chasing a soccer ball, and I had to hop sideways to avoid flattening him. "Sorry," he yelled, laughing. I muttered something automatic, "You're good, watch where you're going," and kept running. But as I passed, something in my chest did this weird little twist. Dark hair. That same stupid half-dimple. I turned my head just enough to see him barrel back toward a woman sitting on a bench. She had sunglasses on and a messy bun. From the side for a second, I thought, no, I knew. I was looking at Lauren. My lungs forgot how to work. I slowed, stared too long, waited for her to turn. A dog barked, someone tugged on my earbuds cord, and when I looked back, she had her face buried in her phone, kid tugging on her sleeve. The angle was wrong. Maybe it wasn't her. My heart was hammering like I'd sprinted, and I hadn't. I told myself I was being insane. Trauma makes you see ghosts. Kids resemble strangers. Ex-wives exist only in legal documents and bad memories. I pushed it down and kept running until my legs shook. If I'd listened to that moment, maybe I would have gotten here sooner. Or maybe I would have just gone crazy earlier. Hard to say. Now, back in the present, with the certificate on my table and the wrong name and the wrong time staring up at me, that day in Kirkland slotted into place like a puzzle piece I'd been holding upside down. I picked up the paper again, forcing myself to read every box this time. Dr. Aaron Whitfield. Hospital number. Codes I didn't understand. Time, 3:46 a.m. I grabbed my laptop, fingers already greasy from too much cheap coffee and not enough food, and typed Dr. Aaron Whitfield, Seattle, into the search bar. There he was. Same signature on a hospital website, only he wasn't listed at Swedish. He was at a different hospital across town, and his specialty wasn't obstetrics. It was internal medicine. My stomach did a slow, unpleasant roll. I searched Dr. Aaron Whitman, Seattle, OB. New result. Different guy. Different face, different hospital affiliation back then. But now, according to a little gray note on a profile page, retired from practice. 2 doctors, 2 similar names, one in my memory, one on my paper. Maybe it was a clerical error. Hospitals screw things up, people misremember names. It happens. But mixed with Kirkland Kid, with Noah at Gasworks Park, with Lauren gone from a maternity ward before I'd even seen her, it didn't feel like an error. It felt like someone had gone in after the fact and rewritten my life in ballpoint pen. I sat back, rubbing my temples hard enough to leave marks. My brain wanted to shut down, crawl back into the safe story. He died, you signed, move on. Anything else is too big, too messy, too dangerous. Instead, my hand reached for my phone. I scrolled past Jordan's name, past my mother's number I hadn't called in 3 days, to a contact I hadn't tapped in years. Olivia Ramirez. Last text from her, some meme about law school debt. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, heart pounding like I was about to confess a crime. "Hey Liv," I typed, then erased it. Too casual. I tried again. "Hey, it's Caleb. I think I need some legal advice." My thumb hesitated for 1 second, maybe 2. Then I hit send. Olivia answered faster than my anxiety. I'd barely had time to pace from the kitchen to the couch and back when my phone buzzed. "Wow, look who's alive," her text said. "You free to talk tomorrow? I'm in court all day today. Coffee? My office is still near downtown." Under that a second. And yes, this counts as billable flirting. Kidding. Mostly. Some part of my chest unclenched a little. Same, Olivia. We settled on a coffee shop a few blocks from the courthouse. The next morning, Seattle did its usual impression of a sad snow globe. Fine drizzle floating in the air, everything gray but somehow still too bright. She was already there when I walked in, at a corner table with her back to the wall, laptop open, blazer over a black t-shirt, hair pulled into a messy knot that only looked accidental. There was a yellow legal pad next to her latte, because of course there was. When she saw me, her face went through 3 expressions in about half a second. Surprise, something like worry, then the half smirk I remembered from college. "Caleb Morgan," she said, standing to hug me. "You look older." "Wow," I said. "Fantastic to see you too. Great start." "You know what I mean." She pulled back, studying my face like it was a case file. "Sit. Tell me what the hell is going on and why you're texting me after 4 years opening with, 'I think I need legal advice.'" I dropped into the chair opposite her and set the hospital envelope on the table between us. It landed with a dull little thud. "That," I said, "and the fact that I ran into my ex-wife yesterday and met my allegedly dead son." Her eyes widened. "Okay," she said slowly, "so we're skipping small talk." I told her everything. Gasworks Park, Noah, the way he'd said Dad, Lauren, Mark, the certificate, the doctor's name, the time. Kirkland, the retired OB. By the time I finished, my coffee had gone cold and my hands wouldn't quite stay still. Olivia listened without interrupting, pen tapping quietly against her legal pad. When I finally ran out of words, she let the silence sit for a beat. "First," she said gently, "I'm really sorry you went through that. All of it." She pointed at the envelope. "Second, can I?" "Yeah," I said. "Be my guest. I've just been staring at it like it might confess on its own." She slid on a pair of reading glasses that made her look exactly like every lawyer joke and somehow better anyway. She flipped through the documents with practiced speed, scanning, pausing, circling things with her pen. "This is the certificate," she murmured. "Okay. Doctor name, time, you're right, that's weird. But weird and illegal are cousins, not twins." Comforting. She shot me a look. "I'm serious. Hospitals mess up paperwork all the time. The transfer of care note is more concerning." She tapped a page I hadn't spent much time on. "There should be a separate notice to you as the spouse if your wife is transferred while sedated." "You don't remember signing anything like that?" "I barely remember my own name from that night," I said. "But no, just those forms. Consent, release, whatever was put in front of me." She nodded slowly. "And Lauren never gave you details later?" "She left," I said. "That's the detail." Olivia scribbled something down. "Okay, so we have a suspicious set of hospital records and a living, breathing 8-year-old. Next question, you're divorced. You have that paperwork?" I pulled a second envelope from my bag. "Right here. It's a lot. Messy is my love language," she said. "Well, that and clear retainer agreements." She started flipping through the divorce decree, the property settlement, the custody section that had been a formality at the time. "No kids. Clean break." That's what I'd told people. Her forehead creased. "Caleb, did you ever attend a hearing?" "I signed everything at my dining table," I said. "Some guy from her lawyer's office came by with a notary stamp. I thought that was normal." She exhaled sharply. "It can be. But this..." She turned a page around so I could see. "There's a waiver of appearance here with your name typed under a signature line, but the signature itself doesn't match any of the others." I looked closer. The loops and angles were mine, but off. Like someone had traced it from memory or a bad photocopy. "So somebody pretended to be me?" I asked. "Somebody helped the court believe you didn't need to be in the room," she said. which is a problem if there were discussions about a child you didn't know existed. There weren't, I said automatically, then stopped. I mean, as far as I know. Olivia's jaw tightened. She pushed her glasses up on her head, thinking. I'm going to request the full case file from the court, she said. And the complete medical record from the hospital. Not the sanitized printout they hand families, the internal logs. Can you do that? I asked. She gave me a look. You texted a family lawyer, remember? This is literally what I do. I felt something like relief and terror crash into each other. I'm not crazy, I said quietly. This isn't just me trying to resurrect a kid because I saw my own face at a park. No, she said. You're not crazy. You're a little late, but that's different. She hesitated, then reached for her laptop. And, full disclosure, I already pulled one thing when you texted, just to see if I was wasting my time today. She clicked a few times, then turned the screen toward me. It was a scanned certificate. King County. Live birth. Mother, Lauren Hayes. Father, Mark Stevenson. Child, Noah Hayes Stevenson. Date of birth, exactly 8 years ago to the day. Same hospital, same floor. My breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. Caleb, Olivia said quietly, whatever this is, it's bigger than a typo. When someone blows up your life, there's a weird moment where you still ask them politely to meet for coffee. Olivia thought I should talk to Lauren before we filed anything. Judges like to see you tried less nuclear options, she'd said, stirring her latte, and I need to know what story she thinks she's told. So I texted Lauren, can we talk? I wrote, just us. The typing bubbles came and went 3 times. Finally, Bellevue. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Don't make a scene. If she was worried I'd make a scene, she didn't know how much of my energy was currently being spent not screaming into a pillow. The place she chose was one of those glass and chrome cafes attached to an upscale shopping center. All white marble tables and hanging plants. The kind of spot where espresso costs more than my first car payment, and everyone's wearing athleisure that costs more than rent. I got there 15 minutes early, because anxiety is punctual. I picked a corner table and pretended to read the menu while watching reflections in the huge front window. She walked in right on time. Black coat, boots, hair perfectly waved. If you didn't know better, you'd think successful marketing executive, not woman who may have forged my signature and faked our child's death. Caleb, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. No hug. No small talk. She set her phone face down on the table like a loaded gun. Lauren, I said, you look Bellevue. She rolled her eyes. You always get snarky when you're scared. Just say what you need to say. The server came over, all smiles. We both ordered coffee we weren't going to drink. When he left, the silence between us felt thick enough to chew. I saw him, I said. No warm-up. At Gasworks, yesterday. You know who I mean. For a split second, something flickered in her eyes. Then the mask slid back on. You shouldn't have come up to us, she said quietly. That was inappropriate. That kid has my face, she shrugged too fast. Genetics are weird. People resemble each other all the time. His name is Noah. Her jaw tightened. We picked that name together, I said. 8 years ago, in our kitchen. We argued about middle names for a week. That was a long time ago, Caleb. He's 8, I said. Exactly 8. Born at Swedish. Same floor. Same week I was told my son never took a breath. Her eyes flashed. Your son died. Did he? I leaned forward. Because I've got a piece of paper at home that says he did. It also says a doctor signed it who never worked that floor, at a time that doesn't match anything I remember. And funny thing, there's another piece of paper, a birth certificate, from that same hospital, same day, listing you as the mother of a perfectly alive Noah. Color drained from her face, then rushed back in a blotchy wave. For a second, I thought she might actually faint. Instead, she laughed, a short, sharp sound. So you've been digging, she said. You always did love your documents. Answer me, I said. My voice came out flatter than I expected. Is he mine? She looked away, watching someone push a stroller past the window. When she finally met my eyes again, there was steel in hers. No, she said, he's Mark's. We were involved before I left. I didn't tell you because you were already not stable. The word hit like a slap. Not stable, I repeated. You mean grieving? I mean, you were smashing plates in our kitchen and sleeping 3 hours a night and driving like you didn't care if you lived, she shot back. You think I was going to hand a newborn to that? So you faked a death certificate instead? I asked. My voice was still quiet. That scared her more than yelling would have. Her fingers dug into her coffee cup. I did what I had to do to protect my child. My child, I said. Mark is his father, she snapped. On paper and in reality, he's the one who's been there. He's the one no one knows. You are a stranger in a park. The words landed exactly where she wanted them to. For a moment, I actually considered leaving it there, letting that be the end of it. Go home. Except that I'd hallucinated 8 years of questions, but then I remembered Noah's dimple. The left one, same as mine. The way his brow creased when he concentrated. The way my name sat under father on a form 8 years ago before someone decided to erase it. I'm going to find out, I said. For sure, if he's not mine, then I walk away and you never see me again. If he is, you won't get near him, she cut in. I will get a protective order so fast your lawyer friend's head will spin. She'd clocked Olivia at the park. Of course she had. You can try, I said. She stared at me for a long moment, weighing something. Then she stood up so abruptly her chair scraped. I am not letting you drag my family into your spiral, she said. Stay away from Noah. Stay away from us. That's not a threat, Caleb. That's a promise. She grabbed her coat and walked out before I could answer, boots clicking sharply on the tile. Our untouched coffee sat between us, cooling. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a second I thought it might be her taking something back. It wasn't. Olivia. Clinic records show Noah had blood work done last year. If we can get a match, we'll know. Call me. I stared at the message, then at the empty chair across from me. Lauren could rewrite names on paper all she wanted. The biology was going to tell its own story. Getting your DNA collected is way less dramatic than TV makes it look. No dark room, no tense music, no lab tech whispering, "Are you ready?" It was just me, Olivia, and a woman in scrubs who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, in a small exam room at a third-party lab near downtown. Open your mouth, the tech said, snapping on gloves. That's what she said, I muttered, then immediately regretted having a reflexive sense of humor at a time like this. Olivia snorted. I'm billing you extra for that joke. The swab scraped the inside of my cheek. Twice. It took maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds to confirm or destroy the story I'd been clinging to for 8 years without even knowing it. We'll send this to the lab along with the sample we requested from the clinic, the tech said, dropping the swab into a little tube. Your attorney will get the report. Attorney. Hearing Olivia called that out loud made everything feel less like a nightmare and more like a case number. Outside, the drizzle had upgraded to full rain. Seattle loves a mood. How long does this usually take? I asked as we walked back to her office. Few days, she said. Maybe a week. You'll obsess the entire time, no matter what I say, so I'm not going to waste breath telling you not to. Good call, I said. She glanced at me. Listen, whatever this paper says, it doesn't erase what you went through. There's no version of this where you're magically fine. I'd settle for legally recognized, I said. She didn't argue. Those days dragged. At work, spreadsheets swam in front of my eyes. Jordan leaned over the wall of my cubicle on day 3, chewing on a pen like it owed him money. You're broken, he observed. More than usual. You sick or just emotionally constipated? Stomach stuff, I said. I think a food truck finally got its revenge. You should sue, he said. You look like the before picture in a cold medicine commercial. He wandered off humming, leaving a maple bar on my desk like an offering to the gods of basic carbs. I stared at it and pictured Noah's face instead, cool, normal, healthy. At night I lay awake imagining 3 words on a report, not the father. It should have been the safe outcome, the one that let me slide back into my carefully constructed life. Instead, every time I pictured it, my chest hurt. The other possibility hurt more. Because if he was mine, then I'd missed 8 years. First steps, first words, birthdays, bad haircuts, nightmares, all given to someone else like I'd been disqualified before the race even started. By day 5, I'd almost convinced myself the lab had lost the samples and moved on with their lives. Then Olivia called. Can you come in? She asked. Now if possible. My stomach did a weird flip. Good news or bad? Come in, she repeated. I'll tell you once you're here. Her office was in one of those old brick buildings near the courthouse, with crooked staircases and creaky floors pretending to be charming. Her name was on a frosted glass door in simple black letters. Ramirez Family Law. She was waiting at her desk, a manila folder in front of her. No glasses this time. That somehow made it worse. Sit, she said softly. That's never what you want to hear from a lawyer, I said, lowering myself into the chair. She opened the folder and slid a few stapled pages toward me, upside down. I could see the lab's logo at the top, a neat header, Paternity Evaluation Report. My hands didn't want to move. I flipped it around anyway. There was a lot of text, explanations, chain of custody, methods, my name, Noah's name. Somewhere in the middle of the second page, a number jumped out at me. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Test result, cannot be excluded as the biological father. The room went very quiet. My vision tunneled a little, edges blurring. I had the absurd thought that maybe I'd passed out and this was some elaborate hallucination my brain had cooked up on the way down. Caleb, Olivia said. I realized my fingers were digging into the paper. I forced them to loosen before I tore the report in half. I had a son, I said. The word sounded wrong, too small. I have a son. Yeah, she said gently. You do. I waited for anger to surge, to want to flip her desk, punch a wall, scream. Instead, there was this huge, crushing weight in my chest, like I'd swallowed wet cement. 8 birthdays. 8 Christmas mornings. 8 summers. All gone somewhere I wasn't invited. A laugh slipped out, sharp and broken. Congratulations, I said. You're looking at the guy who managed to miss his kid's entire childhood because he trusted paperwork. That's not what happened, she said quietly. It's part of what happened. She let that sit, then pulled another folder from her drawer. Here's what we're going to do, she said. I'm filing a petition to establish paternity and for custody and visitation orders. We'll also move to set aside your original divorce decree on the grounds of fraud and concealment. English, Liv. We're going to ask the court to officially name you as Noah's father, she said, and to reopen what happened 8 years ago. The hospital records, the fake death certificate, any agreements made without your informed consent. And Lauren and Mark? We'll fight like hell, she said. They'll hire the meanest firm they can find. They'll say you're unstable, obsessive, that you're trying to rip a child away from his real father. They'll weaponize every bad night you ever had. I thought of smashed plates, empty bottles, speeding through red lights at 3 a.m. with the radio too loud. Things I'd neatly filed under grief that were now about to become evidence. Do I have a chance? I asked. She held my gaze. If this were just a he said, she said about who's the better parent, I'd tell you to brace for the worst. But we have this. She tapped the DNA report, and we have a pattern of lies. Judges don't love being lied to. I nodded slowly. My fingers traced the edge of the paper like I could memorize it by touch. Okay, I said. Do it. She smiled just a little. I already started drafting. I was 90% sure what the test would say. Later that week, a process server handed Lauren and Mark copies of the petition. Olivia forwarded me a PDF of their lawyer's first reply. I opened it alone at my kitchen table, heart thudding. In neat, polite language, it described me as emotionally volatile, prone to obsessive rumination, and a potential danger to the minor child. At the bottom of the page, one phrase stood out like it was written in blood. Given his history of psychological instability following the alleged fetal death. I stared at the words, jaw clenched. They'd stolen my son. Now they were planning to use my grief as the reason I shouldn't get him back. Finding out you're a dad is wild. Finding out you're a dad and possibly a criminal at the same time is efficient, I guess. The week after the first court filings, my life started shrinking. It began with an email from HR titled Quick Check-In, which is corporate for "We're about to ruin your day." Hey Caleb, my manager Sam said as I walked into the small conference room. The blinds were half closed even though it wasn't sunny. HR lady, Kara, cardigan, concerned eyebrows, sat beside him with a folder and a glass of water already poured like they were prepping for a fainting. Am I getting fired? I asked before I could stop myself. Kara did the practiced little laugh. No, nothing like that. We just wanted to touch base. They slid a copy of something across the table. A letterhead I didn't recognize, a bunch of numbers. my name. Have you had any legal issues come up recently? Sam asked. Outside of work. That's vague, I said. Parking tickets? Netflix password sharing? Serious ones, Kara clarified. We've received an inquiry from a federal investigator regarding some financial transactions flagged under your social security number. The room tilted a few degrees. What kind of transactions? I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling I knew. Payments from a medical practice in Bellevue to an LLC where you're listed as a consultant, she said, checking her notes. Over several years, the amounts aren't huge individually, but there's a pattern, and some unpaid tax liabilities attached. I actually laughed. It burst out before I could catch it. I don't have an LLC, I said. If I did, believe me, my apartment wouldn't still smell like old takeout. Sam didn't smile. The email from the investigator mentioned your ex-wife's new husband, a Dr. Mark Stevenson? Of course it did. I sat back, pressed my thumb hard against the edge of the table. I never worked for him, I said. I've barely met him. If there's something in my name, they used my information without my consent. Kara folded her hands. We're not accusing you of anything, she said. But given the nature of our business, we have to be proactive. Your access to certain client accounts will be limited while this is looked into. So, a soft suspension, I said. Diet suspension. Now with less flavor. Sam winced. Just for a bit. Take some time, deal with whatever this is. We'll revisit in a few weeks. I walked back to my desk feeling like someone had turned down the volume on the world. Jordan swiveled in his chair as I sat. You good? He asked. You look like you just saw your own obituary. Work's cutting me to the kids' menu for a while, I said. Apparently I've been running a secret side hustle as a crooked consultant. He blinked. Are you? No, I said, but someone wants it to look that way. His face went serious in a way I didn't see often. Okay, if you need anything, like help moving your stuff to the bridge you'll be living under, let me know. Thanks, man, I said. I'll put you down as my emergency contact/blanket. That night, Olivia forwarded me another filing from Mark and Lauren's lawyer. They were requesting a psychological evaluation for me and a temporary order restricting my contact with Noah pending investigation of potential financial crimes. Neat, efficient. Tie it all together. Unstable grieving dad, maybe criminal, trying to snatch a child from a respectable doctor. Whoever was running PR for their side deserved a raise. By the third day of my professional timeout, I was seriously considering just disappearing. Mexico sounded nice. Somewhere with no extradition treaties and no memory of Seattle's weather. I was halfway through stress cleaning my already small kitchen when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Caleb Morgan? A woman's voice asked. Nervous, youngish but tired. That depends, I said. If this is about my car's extended warranty, I'm already in hell. You don't need to call. A small, surprised laugh. No, my name is Emma Collins. I used to work at Lakeview Aesthetic and Ortho, Dr. Stevenson's clinic. Every muscle in my body went still. How did you get my number? I asked. I contacted an attorney, she said quickly. Olivia Ramirez, she said you might be willing to meet. She's there with me. We're at a coffee shop near her office. She thought I should talk to you directly. 10 minutes later, I was pushing open the door of a tiny place off a side street. Warm light, mismatched chairs, the smell of burnt espresso and sugar. Olivia sat at a back table with a woman in a navy cardigan, hair pulled into a low ponytail, hands wrapped around a mug like it was a flotation device. Caleb, this is Emma, Olivia said. She handled accounting at Mark's clinic. Handled, past tense. Emma gave me a quick, apologetic smile. Hi. Sorry, I know this is awkward. Awkward is when you wave at someone who wasn't waving at you, I said, sitting down. This is new. Olivia slid a manila envelope across the table. Emma reached out after she saw your name on some court documents Mark was yelling about, she explained. Apparently he's not thrilled about being sued. Emma swallowed. I've been uncomfortable for a while, she said, with some of the bookkeeping. I tried to ignore it. Student loans, you know. But when I saw your name, and then I remembered. Remembered what? I asked. She took a deep breath. We have a vendor file in our system, CM Advisory, listed as a consultant. We pay for financial structuring. The tax ID, address, date of birth, they match yours. But the email address, the bank account, the signatures, none of it looked right. When I asked Dr. Stevenson once, he said you were an old friend helping him optimize. But then I saw your petition in the family case, the timeline. She slid a stack of printed spreadsheets and a few email screenshots out of the envelope. One subject line read, using C's info, make sure forms look legit. The sender was a personal email I recognized immediately, Lauren's. My throat went dry. I didn't know who to tell, Emma said. But if they're trying to push this on you with the IRS or whoever, it's not right. And it's not legal. I stared at the papers. My name, my social security number, my life, repurposed as a shell game. Olivia's voice cut through the static. This, she said, fingertip tapping the email header, is what we call leverage. For the first time since this started, I saw something flicker under the exhaustion in my own reflection in the window. Not hope exactly. Something sharper. Family court is like a dentist's office for your soul. Same beige walls, same old magazines, same sense that something is about to hurt and it's technically for your own good. I sat at the long wooden table next to Olivia, staring at the grain in the surface like I could map an escape route in it. Across the aisle, Lauren and Mark sat with their lawyer. A guy in a perfect suit and a haircut that probably had its own billing code. The judge was an older woman with sharp eyes and a wedding ring that looked like it had seen some things. Her nameplate read, Han J.K. Andrews. She shuffled some papers, then looked up. Good morning, she said. We're here on the matter of Morgan vs. Hayes and Stevenson regarding paternity and custody of minor child Noah Hayes Stevenson, as well as the motion to set aside the prior dissolution decree. Counsel, appearances for the record. The lawyers did their little ritual. Names, firms, who they represented. My name sounded strangely small in that room. Opposing counsel, Grant Marshall, because of course that was his name, stood first. Your Honor, my clients are prepared to demonstrate that Mr. Morgan's petition is the product of unresolved grief and a concerning obsession with a child who has known another man as his father his entire life. He gestured in my vague direction like I was a wild animal he'd agreed to tolerate as evidence. We will show a history of psychological instability, he went on, as well as emerging questions about potential financial misconduct. In light of those concerns, we submit that any contact between Mr. Morgan and the child would be detrimental at this time. Olivia rose, calm. Your Honor, we will present DNA evidence confirming my client is Noah's biological father, along with hospital and court records that raise serious questions about how he was erased from his son's life. Whatever grief Mr. Morgan has endured, it was not created in a vacuum. The judge nodded. Understood. Let's begin with the paternity issue. They called me first. I took the stand, swore to tell the truth, sat in a chair that felt 2 sizes too small, and tried not to stare at Noah sitting in the second row next to a court-appointed guardian. He swung his legs, glancing around the room, bored. He had no idea his whole life was being argued in front of him like a budget proposal. Grant approached with a file in his hand and a sympathetic smile that belonged in a pharmaceutical commercial. Mr. Morgan, he said, you experienced the loss of a child 8 years ago, correct? I swallowed. That's what I was told. And you struggled afterward, he said. Trouble sleeping, anger, risky behavior? Yes. Smashing plates, driving recklessly, drinking? Sometimes, I said. My voice stayed low. I wasn't going to pretend I'd handled it well. He nodded gravely, turning to the judge. So we have a man who suffered a devastating loss, who never fully addressed it, who now believes. Olivia was on her feet. Objection. Counsel is testifying and mischaracterizing the evidence. The paternity report is clear. The judge held up a hand. Sustained. Mr. Marshall, stick to questions. Grant pursed his lips, then shifted tactics. Morgan, when you saw Noah at the park, you approached him, didn't you? I picked up a ball he dropped, I said. And then you began an investigation, requesting medical records, contacting past acquaintances, hiring an attorney, without once speaking to my clients directly before serving them with legal papers? I spoke to Lauren, I said. She told me he wasn't mine. And yet you persisted, he said, because you wanted to believe your son was alive. Isn't that true? I met his eyes. I persisted because the paperwork didn't match the story I'd been fed, and because a lab confirmed what my gut already knew. He looked annoyed, which I took as a small win. Olivia's turn was kinder. She walked me through the bare bones, what I remembered from the hospital, the death certificate, the transfer I was never told about, seeing Noah, the DNA test. No theatrics, just facts. Then she called Emma. Emma looked like she wanted to disappear into her navy cardigan, but her voice held steady as she explained her job at Mark's clinic, the vendor file under my name, the payments, the email from Lauren. Olivia put the printed email on the screen. The words, "Using C's info, make sure forms look legit," sat 10 feet tall above the judge's head. Grant tried to poke holes. "Miss Collins, you were terminated from your position, weren't you? You may have an axe to grind." Emma shook her head. "I quit," she said, "because I didn't want to go to prison for someone else's choices." The judge's expression didn't change, but she wrote something down. Next came the nurse. Her name was Margaret Shaw. Late 50s, gray hair pulled back, hospital ID on a lanyard even though she was off duty. She clutched her hands together as she spoke. "I remember that night," she said. "It was unusual." She described Lauren's labor, the emergency, the rush to the OR. We had a baby with a low APGAR score, but there was a heartbeat. He was taken to the NICU. I helped wheel Miss Gorba Hayes back to recovery. Olivia held up a copy of a chart. "Is this your note, Miss Shaw? Dated that night, indicating live birth transferred to NICU?" "Yes," Margaret said. "And yet the discharge summary provided to Mr. Morgan lists fetal demise and known NICU transfer." Olivia said. "Do you know how that happened?" Margaret's mouth tightened. "No," she said. "But months later, I was asked to re-sign some forms. I thought it was just updating the file. When I saw Mr. Morgan's name on the news with this case, I realized." She trailed off, shaken. Olivia let the silence settle, then spoke softly. "Why are you here today, Miss Shaw?" "Because a father should know if his baby lived," she said, voice cracking. For the first time, the judge looked directly at Lauren. Her expression was unreadable, but it wasn't warm. Finally, Olivia called Lauren herself. Lauren took the stand in a tailored dress and that same perfect hair. Under the oath, she looked smaller. "Miss Hayes," Olivia began, "did you tell your husband 8 years ago that your baby had died?" "Yes," Lauren said. "Was that statement true?" She hesitated. Just a flicker, but in that room it was a scream. "It was complicated," she said. "Let me simplify," Olivia said, still polite. "At the time you told Mr. Morgan his son was dead, was Noah alive?" Lauren's eyes flicked toward Mark, then back. "Yes," she whispered. The air went out of the room. "And did you participate in or consent to any alteration of hospital records or legal documents to remove Mr. Morgan as Noah's father?" Olivia pressed. Tears pooled in Lauren's eyes. For a second, I saw the woman from the delivery room, scared and overwhelmed. Then her jaw tightened. "Mark said it was safer," she said. "You were spiraling, Caleb. You were angry all the time. He said if we didn't cut you out, you'd drag us all under. He knew people at the hospital, with the lawyer. He said it could be fixed, that Noah would be better off." "So you let him rewrite the facts," Olivia said quietly, "and you never corrected it. For 8 years. Lauren's shoulders slumped. "I thought you'd move on," she said, looking at me. "I thought you'd be better without all of this." I swallowed hard. "You didn't give me a chance to find out." The judge held up a hand. "That's enough for today," she said, voice firm. "We'll reconvene for closing arguments tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm issuing a temporary order that Mr. Morgan be allowed supervised visitation with Noah once a week, effective immediately." The gavel didn't slam dramatically. It just tapped once. Somehow, that quiet sound echoed louder than anything else in the room. Supervised visits. Not a victory. Not yet. But for the first time, there was an official piece of paper that said I could see my son, and nobody could erase that with a pen. The first time I saw my son in a room with my name on the court order, we were surrounded by plastic furniture. The supervised visitation center was in a converted office building near downtown. Fluorescent lights, motivational posters, and a smell that was equal parts hand sanitizer and goldfish crackers. A woman with a clipboard introduced herself as our monitor and explained the rules in a voice she'd clearly used 1,000 times. No yelling, no discussing the case, no undermining the child's relationship with either parent, she said. You're here to focus on building a healthy bond. Got it, I said. No cross-examining my 8-year-old. I'll try my best. Noah sat at a round table flipping a deck of Uno cards, shoulders hunched under a navy hoodie, sneakers scuffing the carpet. He looked smaller in here than he had in the park. Or maybe I was just seeing him without the buffer of disbelief. Hey, I said, sitting down across from him. My hands wanted to reach for him. I made them reach for the cards instead. You know me from the park, I'm Caleb. He glanced up, then back down. Yeah, he mumbled. Hi. The monitor perched at a desk a few feet away, pretending to do paperwork. Her eyes never left us. So, I said, you good at Uno? Because I should warn you, I'm very bad at losing. The corner of his mouth twitched. Dad always wins, he said. Of course he does. Then I guess we're on the same team, I said. Let's team up against probability. He gave me a look like he wasn't sure if that was a joke. Fair. Half the time I'm not sure either. We played. He beat me. A lot. I made a big deal of it, groaning when he dropped a draw 4, accusing him of psychological warfare. The monitor hid a smile behind her clipboard. For the first 20 minutes he called me Caleb. Once he slipped and said, sir, then looked horrified. It's okay, I said. I answer to a lot of things. Caleb, hey you, the guy who overcooks pasta. Mom burns pasta, he blurted, then went stiff like he'd betrayed state secrets. Yeah, I said lightly. We have that in common. Maybe it's a generational thing. Bit by bit, the space between us softened. He told me about his favorite video game, his hatred of math homework, his friend Liam who always cheats at kickball. I filed away every detail like it was classified intel. He didn't ask who I was to him. I didn't push. We weren't allowed to discuss the case anyway, and honestly, I wasn't sure how to fit 8 years of lies into a therapeutic soundbite. After an hour, the monitor cleared her throat. Time, she said gently. Say goodbye. Noah stood, hands in his pockets. Okay, he said. See you next time? The fact that there would be a next time was so new my brain almost rejected it. Yeah, I said, next time. He walked back to the door where the guardian waited to escort him out. He turned once and gave me a quick wave. Small, awkward, perfect. I sat there for a moment after he left, staring at the empty chair, feeling like someone had rearranged my organs. Olivia called that afternoon. You sitting down? She asked. I'm lying on the floor, I said. That count? That count? Good enough, she said. The DA's office just filed charges against Mark. Tax fraud, insurance fraud, identity theft. They executed a search warrant at the clinic yesterday. News will pick it up soon. I pictured Mark's perfect suit. The way he'd smirked walking into court. The casual way he'd rested a hand on Noah's shoulder. He out on bail? I asked. For now, she said. But his medical license is suspended pending review, and a judge just froze several of his accounts. He won't be paying for any more designer coffee for a while. And Lauren? I asked. She's being investigated for perjury and fraud on the court, Olivia said. No charges yet, but the judge was unimpressed. I expect sanctions at minimum. Loss of primary custody is on the table. I exhaled slowly. I'd imagined this moment 100 times, usually with more fire and brimstone. In reality, it just felt heavy, necessary. I should feel happier, I said. You're allowed to feel more than one thing, she said. Relief and grief are not mutually exclusive. The temporary order turned into something more permanent 2 weeks later. In her final ruling, Judge Andrews officially recognized me as Noah's legal father. She granted joint legal custody, primary physical custody to me during the school week, with Lauren getting alternating weekends and supervised midweek dinners until she completed a parenting class and ongoing therapy. Mark's name was removed from the birth certificate. His criminal case moved to a different court, a different judge. But the ripples were felt here. The phrase pattern of deceit showed up more than once in the written decision. When I read the line, the court finds that Mr. Morgan was deliberately and systematically excluded from his son's life through fraudulent means, my hands shook so hard I had to put the pages down. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the dangerous one. They'd finally put it in writing. The first night Noah slept at my apartment, he stood in the doorway of the small second bedroom I'd turned in his with a thrift store desk and a lamp shaped like a rocket. "Is this all for me?" he asked. "Technically the lamp is for both of us," I said. "But yeah, it's yours." He ran a hand over the comforter like it might disappear if he pressed too hard. "What do I call you here?" he asked quietly. The question hit harder than any court document. "You can call me Caleb," I said, heart lodged in my throat. "Or we can figure it out later. No rush." He nodded. "Serious?" "Okay," he said. "Good night, Caleb." He closed the door gently. I leaned my forehead against the hallway wall and let myself feel everything at once. Rage, relief, guilt, a small, fragile thread of something like hope. Justice looked messier than I'd imagined. But for the first time in 8 years, my son was asleep in the next room, and nobody could file that out of existence. If you ever want to know how small a life can look on paper, sit through a sentencing hearing. Months after my custody ruling, I found myself in the back row of a different courtroom, watching Mark stand in front of a different judge. No wood paneling here, just white walls, bad fluorescent lighting, and a row of people whose worst decisions were summarized in bullet points. Multiple counts of tax fraud, insurance fraud, and identity theft, the prosecutor recited. A years-long pattern of deception. I'd read it all in the discovery. I knew the numbers, the schemes, the way my social security number and some shell company had been used to launder his money. Still, hearing it out loud, well, it was almost poetic, in a petty, bureaucratic way. Mark wore a cheaper suit than usual. His hair still looked expensive, though. Old habits die hard. He didn't turn around to look at me. Good. I didn't come for eye contact. The judge gave him 4 years, with the possibility of parole, plus restitution and forfeiture of assets. Nothing movie-level dramatic, no gasps, just a gavel and a line in a docket. Later, I saw a headline online about a respected Bellevue surgeon convicted of fraud. The comments were brutal in a way only strangers on the internet can be. I closed the tab. I didn't need the noise. I already had what mattered, an official record that said, in very formal language, "It wasn't you." Lauren's consequences came slower. She didn't go to prison. No orange jumpsuit, no perp walk. Instead, she got probation, mandatory therapy, fines, and a judge who made it very clear that any further dishonesty would slam the door on her custody rights. At first, her visits with Noah were supervised, then gradually less so as she stuck to the program. We exchanged stiff, polite hellos in parking lots. She looked smaller each time. I felt not vindictive, not forgiving, something in between. Tired. Life didn't magically become a montage after that. I moved out of my Capitol Hill apartment into a small rental house in Kirkland, a 2-bedroom with a patchy lawn and a driveway just big enough for my aging Honda. Noah picked the paint color for his room, blue, obviously, and helped me assemble a wobbly IKEA dresser like it was a NASA mission. Work slowly came back online. Once the investigation cleared me, HR let me touch grown-up accounts again. Jordan celebrated by putting a sticky note on my monitor that said, "Mostly innocent," with a smiley face. Olivia started coming over more. At first it was to go over paperwork at my kitchen table, then to share takeout on nights Noah was at his mom's. One day I realized I hadn't thought of her as my lawyer in weeks. Just Olivia. We didn't have some grand romantic confession. It was more like turning on a lamp and realizing the light had been there the whole time. You just hadn't flipped the switch. The first time she stayed over when Noah was home, I nearly had a panic attack about toothbrush placement. "Is this weird for you?" I asked him, over pancakes that were somehow both burnt and undercooked. He shrugged. "Mom has a boyfriend," he said. "He can't cook." "You can't cook either. Seems fair. I took that as a blessing. The what do I call you question hung around for a while. Sometimes he slipped and called me my other grown-up when explaining our setup to friends. Once I overheard my Caleb and had to go pretend to look for something in the pantry until my eyes stopped stinging. The shift happened on a Saturday in late spring. We were at a little league field, the kind with dusty bases and uneven outfields. Noah had insisted on trying baseball that year. I'd signed the permission forms with hands that shook more than I wanted to admit. Now he stood at the plate, helmet slightly too big, knees bent the way we'd practiced in the backyard. Olivia sat beside me on the bleachers, thigh pressed against mine, thermos of coffee between us. "Relax," she murmured. "You're gripping that railing like it owes you money." "Very supportive, thank you," I muttered, unclenching my fingers. The pitcher wound up, through. Noah swung. For one frozen second, I thought he'd missed. Then the ball connected with a sharp crack and sailed out toward left field, higher and farther than anything he'd managed before. He took off running, arms pumping, helmet bobbing. First base, second, third. The coach waved him home, windmilling his arm like a man possessed. The other parents shouted, clapped, banged on the fence. My heart felt like it had climbed out of my chest to run alongside him. He crossed home plate, stumbling a little, and the ump called, "Safe." His teammates swarmed him, slapping his helmet, yelling. He looked around like he couldn't quite believe his own legs had done that. Then his eyes found me in the bleachers. He broke away from the cluster of kids and ran straight toward the fence, cleats kicking up dust, cheeks flushed. He shouted, "Did you see that?" The word hit me harder than any verdict. For a beat, everything else went quiet. The parents, the traffic, the whistle on the other field. It was just that one word hanging between us, completely unforced, like he'd been saying it his whole life. I stood up, swallowing past the lump in my throat. "Yeah," I said, voice rough. "Yeah, I saw." He grinned so wide, I thought his face might split in half, then sprinted back to the dugout like the world was made of light. Beside me, Olivia slipped her hand into mine under the railing. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Later that night, after Noah fell asleep in his blue room, I stood in the hallway listening to his slow, even breathing. The house hummed softly. Fridge, pipes, the distant whoosh of a car passing outside. 8 years ago, I walked out of a hospital believing my son was gone. Now, in a small, slightly crooked house in Kirkland, he was snoring softly behind a door with a glow-in-the-dark star sticker peeling off. Justice hadn't brought him back. The truth had. And somehow, in the wreckage of everything we'd lost, we'd built something new. A life where he could run toward me, yelling, "Dad," and I could finally, fully, run toward him too. Some nights I still wake up at 4:17 a.m. Not as often as before. Now it usually means the dog needs to go out or I forgot to switch the laundry. But there's always that half second where my brain checks. Hospital hallway, or old house in Kirkland? Fluorescent lights, or glow-in-the-dark stars on a kid's ceiling? So far it's been the stars every time. Life, as it turns out, is mostly school drop-offs and snack negotiations. Noah is into coding now, and baseball, and a YouTube channel where a guy yells about video games at a volume that should be illegal. Sometimes I look at him arguing with me about bedtime and have this weird double vision. The 8-year-old I met in a park, and the kid who knows exactly which cabinet the cereal lives in because he's been raiding it for years. Lauren and I exchange schedules and tax forms by email. We talk about Noah's grades and allergies, and never about hospitals or courtrooms. She's different, quieter, humbled in a way that's not fun to watch. I'm not sure forgiven is the right word for what sits between us now. It's more like a ceasefire with joint custody. Mark sends child support from his inmate account. I don't read his letters. I don't need his apologies to know who I am to my son. The envelope from Swedish still lives in my drawer, but it's under soccer registration forms and a half-finished Lego instruction booklet. I haven't opened it in a long time. Not because I'm afraid of what's inside, but because I already know. My son is alive, He calls me dad when he's excited and dude when he wants something. He rolls his eyes the same way I used to roll mine at my father, which feels like some cosmic joke. The past didn't disappear. It just stopped being the only story I had. Now, when Noah yells from the other room, "Dad, come see this," I don't have to wonder who he means. I just go,